justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Beagle,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Present.
Councilmember Behrman,
Here.
Councilmember Gotchel,
Here.
Councilmember Brendan Fox,
Here.
Councilmember Sharp,
Present.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions to the agenda as presented tonight, City Manager?
Mayor, I have no changes or additions, sir.
Anybody on the dais? All right, we'll move on to the first item is approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes to approve tonight. It's the minutes from the regular City Council meeting of September 14th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Any questions? Corrections? All right, I got a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of September 14th, 2021. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have no correspondence tonight, which moves us to the first call to the public. The rules to the public are as follows. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the first call to the public?
Russ Meredith, I live at 378 Fletcher here in Wixom. There were just a couple items on the agenda I wish to draw your attention to and strongly encourage you to support. The first two are items 1 and 2, dealing with the Michigan Airline Trail and a new business. This is a tremendous asset for Wixom. I'm on it all the time. Fortunately, it's right next to my house. And it is probably the most, Wixom section is probably the most heavily utilized I see. I ride it out to West Bloomfield, I ride it to the Huron Valley Trail. I see more people walking, biking, riding, skating, skipping, and driving things they shouldn't be on the trail than any place else. And a lot of cities have a bike path near them, and they desperately try and find a way to get people from the bike path to downtown. The extension's going right downtown. This is going to be an absolute boom for our businesses, for the restaurants down there, give people a chance to come and sample while they're on bike and then come back later and go to the other fine establishments we have and find out about things like Green Goat. So I think this is something you guys should really support, and I think I would encourage you to do so. The second is item 4 on your agenda. That is the stop sign at the corner of Theodore and Fletcher over in where's Dorchester? Where do I live? That's the corner I live on. When I first moved into that house in 17, it was a 3-way intersection with a 1-way stop. That wasn't a real problem. Fletcher ended at my backyard. There was nothing behind us but a field. For the last 2 years, there's been houses moving in there and people moving in. We've had numerous near accidents. I've been involved in several of them where I've either had to slam on the brakes, my bike or my car, because somebody comes down Theodore and just flies through it. Coming west, going eastbound on Theodore, you have a stop sign. Going on westbound, you have nothing. And Fletcher has no stop sign either direction, never has. So we strongly encourage you to install a westbound stop sign on the east side of Fletcher. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Russ, that guy skipping, it was me.
I thought that was.
Anybody else for the first call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the first call to the public and move on to City Manager's reports, the Departmental Monthly Report of August 2021. Any questions? Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Direct this to Director Sigma, I believe. The lane work on southbound Wixom Road, just south of West, how long do we foresee that happening? I don't know if you've all been out trying to go southbound on Wixom between 4 and 5 o'clock, but it's backed up all the way to Pontiac Trail. Is that, I didn't know we were going to be shutting a whole lane down to work on the lane.
So when they, yeah, we were not aware of
Okay.
how long that was either. When
Any idea how long that's going to last?
it shouldn't last more than a few days.
Okay, I mean, I know we want that lane. That was part of the agreement to put a lane in, but
Right.
it seems early and it's like I thought maybe they were working at night, and they started at 5 in the afternoon or
No,
something.
yeah.
I think it's all day, so,
It's gonna be all day.
Okay.
Until we're finished.
no,
I-
just
I
throwing
have
everything
not-
at it, I hope, to get
No,
done
this is
quickly.
it's an RCOC project or coordinated through them.
Okay.
And we haven't talked with them much, so I can give you some additional information if you need.
If it's going to be more than this week, yeah, could you,
No problem.
just find out and let me know, just,
Yes, sir.
and we'll try to avoid it.
Can do.
It's twice, two nights in a row now.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I do know that they have a lot of the curbage in on the ring roads, so they'll be making progress on that, I'm sure, too. They'll probably pour that.
Pour it, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Grillen Fox?
Thank you. Regarding the economic development report, just wondering, first of all, thank you for the report. But I had a question about the 7-Eleven, the old 7-Eleven property. Any movement on that at all?
Yes, so actually just yesterday, we had a meeting, another meeting with the property owners over there and their real estate agent, mainly talking about the East Retail. Nothing major to report, don't worry. We'll tell you when there is. But they indicated to us that they have a restaurant interested in it. The deal's taking a little bit longer. I think there's an international component to it where the business owner, so we'll see if that comes to fruition. We know there's been a lot of interest. It just kind of takes time on their end. But we've been coordinating with them and talking about the potential for a liquor license there too. So
Okay, fingers crossed. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. Also, regarding the economic development report here, you had noted the deer management survey having gone out. Have we closed that yet?
Yes.
What were the responses like?
So yes, we did close the report on September 20th. We received about 240 responses. I don't have the full package of responses in front of me. We can share that information with you. To summarize, basically, there doesn't seem to be a lot of concern from the community about deer tearing up yards or frequent accidents. That was the number one thing that we hear in other communities, and I think that was part of Farmington Hills' initiative to start this coalition with other Oakland County communities. So the community doesn't seem that worried about it in that sense, and I think there's actually strong support for letting the deer sort of manage themselves and not a significant need for the city to be involved. That's kind of
We'll be doing a summary report on it and providing a memo to you, just summarizing, giving you some highlights of the responses as well as listing all the responses, just so you have a good idea of what the responses were like. Drew's summary of it is pretty accurate. I would say that most people don't have that as a high concern on their list. Something that we heard the same from Tim Sigmund, our DPW, in terms of he felt that the concern level would not be that high, but I wanted to make sure that we checked into it a little bit further, so that's why we did the survey, just to get some feedback from people.
So does that mean we won't be participating with Farmington Hills then?
I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too soon, if you'll pardon the mixed metaphor on this one, but no, I don't plan on recommending us getting involved with that initiative.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Also on the economic development, you're popular.
I wrote too much.
On the redevelopment ready community certification, it said that 34% of the activities were on hold. Is that something that we're not ready to get those started yet for the certification?
Yeah, that is the primary thing. One of the focuses I've had with going through this program and having done it in other communities before this is really focusing on one of these larger tasks at a time, one or two of them. So right now we're working on the DDA plant. That'll be a component. The Village Center area ordinance updates, that's another component. We've knocked off a lot of the kind of smaller things in terms of website updates, making sure your content on the website's updated. And the other thing is some of them stack upon each other. So as an example, when you get into the redevelopment ready property packages, and I don't just mean advertising what properties you have available. They have a very kind of set package that they look for and they work with you on, but they don't let you get credit for that until you've gotten the first I think it's 5 criteria sections done. So there's some nuance in that, but yeah, we have some way to go. It's mostly bigger projects. Another example is a full-fledged public participation plan. That's something I think we're very interested in doing, but we want to make sure that each project is given the attention it needs as we go through the process. So,
Do you think we're 1 year, 2 years away, or?
going kind of at the pace we have been, at least since I've gotten here, I'm optimistic we can get this done with the next year and a half, 2 years. But some of these projects do just take time. Another example, like the economic development strategy. A process like that really does, when you include public engagement, getting businesses involved, designing the whole, what it'll look like, gathering your data, all that takes, a number of months and really a lot of effort. It'll be coordination with us and CIB. So we just haven't even started that yet. But yeah, I think 2 years is a comfortable time frame to say we'll have all of these pieces in place and we'll be there. But you'll see improvement well before then in terms of.
If I recall, 2 years ago, we were not eligible for a number of grant opportunities because we did not have the certification. So I hope that we get it done and get eligible for those grants.
I think that, and obviously I wasn't with the city during COVID for much of it, but I do think that slowed down some of these projects that had started really before then, right? Everything kind of got strange there for a few months. So I think that took things off course a little bit, just focusing on other priorities, and now we're really getting back into it. And unfortunately, the projects we're focusing on right now are somewhat time intensive, like the DDA plan, the meetings that go into it, updating the revisions and having more meetings with different organizations. It's just a process,
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
About the senior center monthly report, I just wanted to again thank, you don't have to come, that's fine. But I wanted to thank you for all your efforts in this area and say that I definitely support the veterans luncheon.
I just have one question, and I see Ruben is here, and it's on the fat, oils, and grease.
Yes.
And we have one business that's exceeded the limit, but they don't serve food. And I know a while back we had Subway on there, and they don't have any fries or anything like that. Now we have this one. What?
The location that Dairy Queen is located at has also got Alex's Pizza, Valari's, the Bake Shop, and I could be missing one more. But all
the
those
restaurant, Mexican restaurant.
They all share, I believe, one grease trap.
Oh.
So the discharge, all their collective discharge comes to one manhole, which we pull the sample from. So the report says Dairy Queen because we use it as a locator for the staff, but in general, it's all the businesses on there. And I was in conversation with the building owner today because of the numerous businesses there. Trying to pinpoint which one is an exceedance is difficult, so I put it on them to try and enforce the limits and get the grease trap cleaned up.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing no more questions, move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. So I have a motion.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business number 1, which is a recommendation to certify the Transportation Alternatives Program grant from the Michigan Department of Transportation, authorize the Phase 2 Michigan Airline and Huron Valley Trail Extension Project, and adopt the authorizing resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Good. Mr. Manager Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have a request before us, much like the first time around when we went through Phase 1 on the Michigan Airline Trail. With that, I have the first paragraph talks about a little bit of history from Phase 1 and talks about the things that we went through with that process, including things that will be before you later on in this agenda, cost participation agreement, which we had for Phase 1 and we will again have in Phase 2. This phase of the trail is picking up from where the existing trail ended on the east side of Wixom Road, picking up on the west side of Wixom Road, proceeding through the city limits. As was mentioned by our interested citizen Russ Meredith there, that it's going to be running through our downtown area thanks to the fact the railroad would not allow us to cross their existing rail line. So there's pros and cons to that. The pros of it is we're very excited about what that's going to mean for us in terms of economic development and boosting downtown businesses that are in that area. That's something that I think most towns would be jealous of. There's a lot of talk about becoming a trail town, and we're going to have our trail running right through our downtown area. So that's something we're very excited about. There's downsides to that, like expenses and things like that that go along with acquiring easements from businesses that would not have been necessary if the railroad had allowed us to cross their existing active rail line. So phase 2 is basically 2.4 miles. It's a partnership between Milford Township and the city of Wixom. The 1.4 miles in Wixom will be completed during this process, and the 1 mile in Milford will be completed as well. Our portion is an extension of the Michigan Airline Trail. Milford Townships is an extension of the Huron Valley Trail, so that's why the name of the project is as it is, with it mentioning both trail sections and both being an extension. The purpose of this action is we were fortunate again to be awarded an MDOT Transportation Alternatives Program grant in the amount of $1.498,000, roughly speaking. In an association with that, we need to certify the TAP grant and state that we're ready to proceed with phase 2, as well as pass a resolution to that effect, and that's what the purpose of the action before you tonight is. We also have John Hensler, who's our Michigan Airline Trail Manager, with us here tonight, as well as Kristen Wilfang, who is with Oakland County and a tremendous resource to us throughout both of these processes on phase 1 and phase 2, if there are any questions. But that's a general summary of the action that's before you tonight. I mentioned the cost participation agreement is next, which relates to how we're going to be reimbursed for fronting costs in association with that TAP grant. So,
Any questions? Councilmember Berman.
Thank you. I'm not sure who my question will go to, one of the two of you, I presume, but a couple times I've asked about the crossing of Wixom Road and the lights or whatever we're going to put there. Have we decided what we're going to do there yet? And I hope it's going to be timed to Pontiac Trail and Wixom Road.
These were both good.
Tag team.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question, and thank you, City Council and Mayor Beagle, for allowing us to address council. So we do have a hawk beacon planned for Wixom Road at that particular location. So it will be a pedestrian activated crossing. Motorists will be required to stop once the lights go solid red. The pedestrians or bicyclists can then cross the roadway. And then once it starts flashing red, motorists can stop, make sure that the route is clear, and then proceed through. That's the intention at this point. And then also working with the school to provide that as a crossing.
So it's not going to be timed to Pontiac Trail and Wixom Road at all?
We think it will be. We talked to the road commission about that, and they're planning to set it up so that it's similar to how the Pontiac Trail crossing is in Walt Lake. If you're crossing Maple Road there, there's a certain bit of timing that goes in play where you push the button, it might not activate right away because they're waiting for that light down the cycle.
Because my personal preference, frankly, is it needs to be timed to Pontiac Trail and Wixom Road. And as much as I'm in support of this trail and this project, if you guys are going to put a crossing there that's like the one on Beck Road, that anyone can stop traffic at any time, it's not what's going to work on Wixom Road.
Yeah, it won't be like Beck Road. Beck Road is just a flashing beacon. This is a beacon that will make people stop. It will be the law to stop.
Because it has to be, in my eyes at least, that if the light is green on Wixom through Pontiac Trail, you can't have the pedestrian traffic stopping the car traffic, because we got to get the cars off of Wixom Road.
And it's our understanding that the road commission is going to set up that kind of time.
So it will be tied to the traffic light at Pontiac Trail and Wixom Road?
That's my understanding, yes.
That's the intent. That is the intent.
we're in active discussions with the Road Commission of Oakland County to make that happen, and I can't see where they would be in favor of something that's going to add to the traffic problem on Wixom Road either. I think they'll cooperate on that. I don't think that's going to be an issue. We're just, the reason the language is being said the way it is, it's subject to getting that approved with the Road Commission of Oakland County. but they're of the like mind that we are. I don't think they're going to want to see an additional stop put in place on Wixom Road and hearing complaints from people because of that. So it should be tied.
I mean, is there a way that we can clarify that we're not going to support the crossing being there if it's not tied, to make sure that that's incredibly important and that happens? Because I just can't personally get behind a crossing that can stop traffic and make it worse than it already is.
I don't know what kind of, I don't know what kind of a decision point do we have any timing on a decision point from Road Commission at all on this? Do we have any promise of that? I mean, we can ask for a clarification as to where they're at in that process and just ask to see what the status is. But again, it's up to the Road Commission, but they're of the same mind you are, Councilmember Behrman. I mean, they're not going to want to have any more additional delays there either. I think the only reason we're using the language we are is because we don't make the decision.
Yeah,
So.
and the plans have been submitted to the Road Commission. We just haven't seen their comments come back yet. So we will confirm that language is in there.
And the plan.
And it's already got precedent on the airline trail when it happened.
And the plans have that we want that hawk light tied to the signal on Pontiac Trail.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Grundle Fox.
Thank you. So I fully support the project. I think it's phenomenal, and I can't wait till it's all done. One thing I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, I see the start date of spring of '22, but I didn't see an end date. Do we have a completion date?
We're anticipating construction to go through about a year from now. Hopefully we'll be done by October or November of next year.
Okay.
Originally we had a thought of starting it in October or November, and then we thought, let's not start work for a month or two and then leave everything torn up for the winter. So hopefully we'll get started fairly early in the spring. I'm hoping April. Other people have thought May, but I want to just get it done and
I'm with you.
the
Get it done.
minimum of problems getting.
Great.
Consistent with phase one, I would anticipate that we'd have substantial completion in the fall of 2022, and then some cleanup items that might have to be taking place in the following spring, but it would be substantial completion at the end of the season. So people will be able to ride.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
I just wanted to also maybe add to that discussion is that, and I had a conversation with Oakland County Road Commission before as well, and the SPAT and the SCAT, that signalization, the technology that's at that intersection is capable of it. So it's just a matter of tying it in so that the SPAT and the SCAT timing get hooked into that signal and the proper delay gets put in there. So I know that the intersection's capable of it, so there should be no reason why we couldn't do it. So.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. I guess just, even though it's not fully related to what we're voting on, since it's the TAP grant, with the lighting, one way or the other, we're going to have another probably larger and broader education on how light signaling and traffic works, because the way people do it on Beck Road and Benstein and everywhere else is the lights are flashing, correct me if I'm wrong, but traffic shouldn't come to a halt. It's more of a notification where if someone's using the trail and there's no traffic, they can press a button and go, and then the lights alert drivers. It's not, hey, I see somebody at the main road, I'm going to stop and back up traffic. So I think one way or the other, even if it is tied in, if we don't educate people how to do it, they're going to screw it up anyway. So
Yeah, for phase one, we created a brochure, we did a video, we have a page on our website that kind of tries to explain the difference between the two types of lights and how they work and everything like that. So I've noticed in emails to me that the complaints from both cyclists and motorists have dropped quite a bit in the last year. People are still getting used to it though. So that process will take a while to flow through and progress, but we'll be doing the same thing.
yeah, I think a lot of people are getting used to just planning on stopping there, since that's what people do rather than treat it correctly. So we might even want to put like signs out by there for drivers that says you may drive. So just do, at a city level, we might want to do something as well to keep traffic moving, to help out the Trailway Council, because nobody in the city, or very few people in the city, are doing that correctly right now. Thank you.
So the pessimist side of me has a feeling that we'll have many similar problems in Wixom as we've experienced in phase one. The optimistic side of me feels that people have learned a lot from the experience with phase one, and hopefully we'll have a lesser learning curve the second time around here in phase two. So I'm hopeful that we'll do better the second time around, but you can count on the fact there'll be some hiccups there, but I think it's going to be less than it was the first time, just because the users are going to be pretty, the people are going to be knowledgeable users already based on what's happened in those other communities, and hopefully it'll translate to Wixom and will be less of an impact for us. That's my optimistic side.
I think a part of it, though, is just people are trying to be courteous, which is all well and good, but you're holding up traffic.
And could create an accident, too. So.
Yeah, so it's
Understood.
just, that's what it boils down to.
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you say this one's going to be flashing red? Because the other ones are flashing yellow, and I think that's the confusing thing, is yellow means don't stop, caution, and they see that, where if it's flashing red, then that means stop.
If in its normal phase, it'll be off.
Uh-huh.
And then once a pedestrian pushes the button and it starts cycling through, it'll start flashing yellow.
Okay.
Then it'll go to solid yellow, and then it'll go to solid red, and that's when motorists are supposed to stop, and then
Okay.
it'll go to flashing red, and then it turns off.
That's different than what we have there. Perfect.
So it'll be,
It's the same system that we have at Pontiac Trail, at Bald Lake, and at Haggerty Road.
Okay, good, yep.
It's a traffic signal.
Yep. Okay. Well, that you have anything else?
but it won't turn on until it's timed with Pontiac Trail and Wixom Road, in theory, if Oakland County agrees.
Yes, there might be a slight delay. If you push the button, it might not activate right away because it's waiting for that other light to cycle.
Perfect, that's what I would like to hear.
All right, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to certify the Transportation Alternatives Program grant from the Michigan Department of Transportation, authorize the Phase 2 Michigan Airline and Huron Valley Trail Extension Project, and adopt the authorizing resolution. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move on to new business number 2. Yeah, you guys can just stay there.
Yeah.
New business number 2 is a recommendation to approve the cost participation agreement between the City of Wixom and the Charter Township of Milford for the Phase 2 Michigan Airline and Huron Valley Trail Extension Project Transportation Alternatives Program grant from the Michigan Department of Transportation, and authorize Mayor Patrick Beagle to sign the agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
City Manager Brown?
Yes, as I foreshadowed here, this is the second piece of activity related to the trail this evening. As in the first phase, we have a cost participation agreement to cover Phase 2 activity. This time around, it's just Milford Township and the City of Wixom, as opposed to 3 parties, as was the case in Phase 1. So again, on the project, there's participating costs that are associated with the Transportation Alternatives Program grant that are covered by this agreement. So if you look at the agreement, in the second page, it talks about $951,338 in local match, of which Milford Township is going to be responsible for $126,810 as an estimate. So what will happen is the City of Wixom, as the designated recipient and applicant for this grant process, and we are the only eligible party in that, because you have to be a city in order to do that. So the city had to serve once again as the Act 51 applicant and recipient, and because of that, we'll be required to basically advance costs that are on the local match side or non-participating local match side for the project. And in those cases, we'll submit a notice to Milford Township for their portion of those expenses, and they'll be required under the terms of this cost participation agreement to refund us those costs of their piece within 30 days of our ask. So there's participating costs at that $951,000 and change, of which Milford will be responsible for that $126,810, while the City of Wixom will be responsible for our piece of that, which is $190,216. And then there's non-participating costs that are not part of the TAP program grant that are also listed in the participation agreement. And those are totaling $371,499, of which $148,600 will be Milford's responsibility, and the City of Wixom would potentially have responsibility for $222,899. So those 2 pieces of local match will be part of this cost participation agreement. And the other thing that's in there is potential overages if there's anything that comes up in relation to other expenses. It would be the same kind of a split, 60%, 40% for the City of Wixom and 40% for Milford Township. You might ask what those are based on, and that's based on mileage as well as kind of complexity is also in there. The section in Wixom has a lot more moving parts. Kristen Wilfing has been warning me for years that this stuff that we've done so far is easy stuff, Brown. Later on, when we get to the second phase, the low-hanging fruit's going to be gone, and it's going to be more complicated. So, and it's come true, and because of that, the expenses are greater in Wixom, and that's where we end up with a 60% cost allocation. So, Kristen was right. As you get to know Kristen, you'll find out she's always right. That's what I would say.
Any questions? All right, seeing none. I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve the cost participation agreement between the City of Wixom and the Charter Township of Milford for the Phase 2 Michigan Airline and Huron Valley Trail Extension Project Transportation Alternatives Program Grant from the Michigan Department of Transportation, and authorize Mayor Patrick Beagle to sign the agreement. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
New business number 3 is a recommendation to adopt a resolution to renew the agreement for information technology services between Oakland County and the City of Wixom, and authorize Mayor Patrick Beagle to sign the agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Very good. Who wants to take this, Drew or Ron?
I'll go ahead and lead
All right.
off. This is a somewhat routine item. We do this every 5 years here. This is a standard services agreement with Oakland County. We share a lot of information technology services with them, whether it be for Clemis or some of assessing through BS&A, taxes, GIS functions. We have our own GIS. They also have tools that they allow us to use that are really helpful for things like sending out mailers for addresses outside of Wix, as an example. So the purpose of this agreement specifically is just to cover a lot of the legal basis for Oakland County. They're a big fan of very long agreements that kind of repeat the same things, but this is pretty standard. Ron can speak a little bit more to the Clemis and the other agreements that we have with Oakland County, and those are where the actual costs are incurred for those services. There are no costs incurred because of this agreement. This just kind of puts the framework in place for us to do these other things that we do with them.
Any questions? All right. Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to adopt a resolution to renew the agreement for information technology services between Oakland County and the City of Wixom, and authorize Mayor Patrick Beagle to sign the agreement. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business number 4 is a recommendation to approve traffic control order number 106 that would require traffic traveling westbound on Theodore Street East to stop at the east side of the easternmost intersection with Fletcher Street before proceeding, and that would require a stop sign to be erected and maintained at this location. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Very good. Public Safety Director Moore.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you. I know that motion is a mouthful. Anytime we as a police department or as a city, anytime we need to change an existing traffic control device or speed limit or add a new one, it has to be done either through the support of crash data or through a traffic engineering study and evaluation. So the intersection in question, when it was first engineered, when it was being constructed, it's right across the street here in the Anthem and the Tribute area. When it was first engineered, a stop sign was put up at the intersection of Theodore and Fletcher. Currently, well, at the time, it was a three-way intersection, as Mr. Meredith has already alluded to. And there was a stop sign put up for Theodore Street. Since then, there's that stub road was added onto, and as Mr. Meredith said, there's now homes going to the east. So currently, it's a four-way intersection where only one of the 4 streets is controlled by a traffic control device. We have no crash data to support putting a stop sign in there. There have been no crashes at that intersection, fortunately. So I was, under Michigan law, I had to reach out to the Transportation Improvement Association to ask for a traffic engineering study and evaluation. The City of Wixom, as you know, has an agreement with the TIA, Transportation Improvement Association, for engineering services much like this. The TIA came out, they did their study, and they did make a recommendation that the other leg of Theodore Street, that uncontrolled leg, get a stop sign, and that the city, and that we move forward with a traffic control order to get that stop sign, and that the DPW erect it and maintain it. I've since had conversations with Mr. Sigma, and he and his crew are certainly more than willing to put the stop sign up and maintain it. So I'm requesting that you approve traffic control order number 106.
How long will it take to put the stop sign up?
I have to imagine once he does what he needs to do with Miss Dig, I have to imagine it would be a week, perhaps, Tim?
Yeah, 3 to 5 days.
3 to 5 days,
Okay.
because they're efficient.
Very good. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you. Public Safety Director Moore, not related to the stop sign itself, but the northernmost portions of both Fletcher and Goodrich are pretty long.
Yes.
And I've noticed, because I pass there twice a day on my bicycle, Mr. Meredith can attest to that, and I noticed that the speeds get quite high for people traveling northbound on Fletcher and Goodrich. And some of them are using it as a cut through, maybe to avoid traffic on Wixom Road. In putting up, let's say, a midway point speed limit sign, do we have to go through the same process with TIA?
Not for a speed limit sign.
Not for a speed limit.
Correct.
It might be something worth considering. A couple of the neighbors in that area also complained to me personally and said it's a big issue.
Yes, I've also heard that complaint, Deputy Mayor, about the speeders there. A lot of people believe that you can put up a stop sign to alleviate that speeding issue, and under Michigan law, you're not permitted to use stop signs to alleviate speeding issues.
I know a lot of residents have put the little yellow signs,
Yeah.
children play here, but maybe an official speed limit sign might help, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, we just had one put up over on Wall Street to let the folks who work down that area know that that's not a drag strip.
All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve traffic control order number 106. That would require traffic traveling westbound on Theodore Street East to stop at the east side of the easternmost intersection with Fletcher Street before proceeding, and that would require a stop sign to be erected and maintained at this intersection. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on, new business number 5 is a discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act funding. City Manager?
Thank you, Your Honor. So we have a memorandum that was sent by me to Mayor and Council for consideration of this discussion regarding the American Rescue Plan Act funding. So the city's estimated to receive about $1.4 million underneath this. This has been kind of a moving target. It's been rumored to be different dollar amounts. It was rumored to become available to us at different points in time. In reality, it still has not been made available to the city, but it is. We do have it on good authority that we expect to receive that about $1.4 million in funding from the ARPA plan, which is the shorthand version for this American Rescue Plan Act. So this funding would come to the city, and there's federal guidance about what you can use that funding for, and the intent of that funding is to basically offset COVID-19 related pandemic impacts that were experienced at the local level. So there's different guidance that's been provided by the federal government about different areas that we can use that funding. It's supportive public health response, addressing negative economic impacts, public sector revenue loss replacement, premium pay, water and sewer infrastructure, and other things. There's a variety of them, and there's a document that we've attached to this memo, the interim final rule on ARPA funds, which was provided by I believe it's the Michigan Treasury Officials Association, if I remember right, some version of that. Yeah, Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association. So there's a listing of many things that we could do with the funding, and long story short, there are issues with a variety of those potential uses of those funds. And most of them, I would say, center along the lines of the fact that we're just not in that business, right? We're a city government. We don't run public health, we don't run behavioral health, we don't run programs to offset medical expenses. We would be faced with basically administrative hurdles like adding staff that we would have to train to do work that other people already do at different levels of government or at different NGOs, non-governmental organizations, not-for-profits, and then do it in a relatively inefficient fashion just to get reimbursed for the cost that we incur. So there's a couple that would be potentially of interest for us as far as I'm concerned, and I talk about it during the course of the memo. One other one that gets discussed is broadband, and that had some attraction for me as something that maybe we could do to enhance our broadband service that would be available in Wixom, but in reality that's designed for more rural areas that don't have service or have substandard service, neither one of which applies to the city of Wixom, so that's really not a fit for us either. The replacing of public sector revenue loss is one that frankly the way that they're keeping track of it or allowing you to keep track of it as a municipality and what you can use to document what you've lost in revenue is very liberal, very free, and without very many meaningful restrictions. As an example, because of the way they're going to set a timing point back in the past, we currently make the decision not to levy the full 3.5 mils of additional operating millage that we have at our disposal, thanks to the generosity of the voters of Wixom. We only use 3.0 mils, right? And they would allow us to claim that as a revenue loss, even though it had nothing to do with the pandemic. So I can say that we could use that particular use of funding and we could recover quote-unquote revenue loss that was attributed to the pandemic or other sources and bring that funding back to the city. And that's a bit of an attraction. But at the same time, we have a water and sewer infrastructure needs in the city that are coming to fruition here. Our wastewater treatment plant is under capacity as it currently stands, but we're fortunate to be looking at new developments in the city at the former Ford Wixom plant on Wixom Road, where we are going to have large-scale demanding users that are going to require additional sewer capacity. And if only one of those major users were to come about, we would probably be still underneath our capacity limits. But when you get into the second and third development, we're going to get to the point where we're going to exceed our sewer capacity. So that's the first issue that comes to mind and makes a look at infrastructure and the sewer side of things attractive from city administration's perspective. Beyond that, for the same thing that I'm talking about there, where those new developments, we can basically use that as a local match to attract businesses and quality tenants to that development, the Wixom Assembly Park that is going into place along Wixom Road. You see the buildings going up along Wixom Road right now. That would allow us to potentially attract better tenants there. Would allow us to boost tax revenue. That would allow us to bring jobs to the area and kind of translate a one-time funding source into something that would be a long-lasting benefit for the community. The other part of the increases to our sewer capacity, our treatment capacity, is that we're experiencing some challenges in relation to certain industrial users and the demands that they're placing on our system, phosphorus being one of them. And one of the remedies that we need to do to address that issue is additional capacity and a secondary clarifier that we would put in if we were to use ARPA funding. We have to do that in the long run, and it's in our capital improvement plan. We have a 10-year capital improvement plan, as you're aware, and we have various investments that are taking place throughout the course of that capital improvement plan within 2 years, within 5 years, within 10 years. But if we were to take the ARPA funding and utilize that $1.4 million to offset the cost, we'd be able to accelerate those improvements to our wastewater treatment plant infrastructure and allow us to make it happen quicker and allow us to improve things more immediately. The other benefit that I'll mention, if we go the route of adding capacity and adding these additional large-scale users at the Wixom Assembly Plant and other places, or Wixom Assembly Park and other places, that's going to be a potential benefit to residents across the city, because one of the problems that we're facing with our billing structure with the costs that we incur for water and wastewater treatment is people are being encouraged to conserve water, not use as much water as they used to. Because of that, we're seeing a reduction in the amount of funding that we're going to be able to bring in on the commodity side, the usage side of water or wastewater. And we still have the same fixed costs that we have. We still have the same huge treatment plant, millions of dollars of expense that go along with that, the personnel that are required, the equipment that are required. And we still have to recover those costs even though we're using less water and less wastewater. So we're starting to shift from usage-based charges more into fixed charges for having a meter or having water service in general, which puts pressure on people that aren't really consuming as much water and wastewater as perhaps they're being required to pay because of that reduction in usage. If we make these improvements and we bring these additional large-scale users into the system, that adds to the amount of billing that we're going to be able to do on the commodity side or the usage side, and we'll hopefully be able to reduce those fixed charges on residents across the city. So it becomes, again, a way of translating this one-time funding source into long-term relief for everybody that's a customer of the city of Wixom in the long run. So because of those and other reasons, city management is recommending that we consider looking at utilizing that ARPA funding to offset the costs associated with those improvements to our wastewater treatment system and allow us to accelerate and get it done more quickly. So the purpose is, after that discussion, is just to solicit feedback from mayor and council about your feelings about that and whether you're in favor of that approach. This is a large-scale piece of funding, and we want to make sure we consult with you about what your preferences are. So that's our recommendation.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you. It's interesting, looking at that aspect of it with the wastewater and the water system. Have we been able to start looking at some numbers and see what the offsets might be? I know that Utility Resources Group usually puts that real nice thing together for us for each budget session that shows the recommendations for 5 years out or whatever, but have we looked at that yet, or are we going to try to feather that data in there and see what this would offset and what might be a benefit to each citizen?
Long story short, we have not done that with Dawn Lund at Utility Financial Services yet, but that's what we would expect to do if we get some direction from you. That's the direction we'd like to go. And this is going to be something that would be coming to a head pretty quickly here because we have the potential, as I said, to really accelerate this investment in our infrastructure into the near future, and we would be potentially looking at, subject to your decision or your thoughts today, I should say. It's not really a decision that we're looking for, just some sort of consensus as to what you'd like to see done. If you agree with this approach, we could be bringing something to council about going out for bid on this work pretty quickly. So we won't have the benefit of having the full-scale run through by UFS or Dawn Lund at this point, but it's something we would certainly do. And Tim and I have discussed it, the finance director, Marilyn Stamper, and I have discussed it, and we do see that there would be potential for some relief there from residential and other customers in the city. So.
And then one other question is, I know that each year when we get the CBDBG funding, and we take a look at a lot of these service groups that come wanting funding. Can any of it be used for one or more of those within the community? I know that there's the early childhood development and health, education, and welfare of children. But are any of those organizations, might they be eligible for at least a little bit of it to help supplement it? I know it's separate than CBDBG, but it might be just something to keep in mind if there's...
Yeah, that's something we could look into, whether that's a possibility. I don't know if it's a cost that has to be incurred more directly by the city, or if it's something where we could move it on to another agency. Like I said, another NGO potentially. I can if Tim can flag Marilyn down and see if she has any information on that. Before we get done with our discussion, perhaps we can get some feedback on that front. But that's something we could look into, certainly.
Well, and I just wanted to add one point to that. One of the things that they talk about, and I've seen and heard in other communities, is that sort of partnership idea. This is an example, but if mayor and city council, if you wanted to see an investment in behavioral health care, as an example, we could potentially partner with another organization like Oakland County Health Services and put money towards that, if that were the direction you want to go. So there are partnership opportunities, whether it can be sent to NGOs, kind of more along like you're talking about, we can find that out. But I know partnerships are something that's kind of been encouraged.
And the time frame that we have to spend this would go into the future, so that could be something we could look at.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Hello, City Manager Brown. The 10-year capital improvement element to this, these wastewater treatment plant, needs these improvements, and we have it stretched out over whatever is left of the amount of time we plan to begin with. This would accelerate it, like you said, and I guess in the end, money's fungible. We're gonna get this money and get a project done, and that money will then be freed up for, other things in the future. So it doesn't feel like it's as critical what we put the money towards, other than the things you laid out with, these things have hurdles, these things don't, these things are, I'm not sure if it'll fly. This will fly. This is, a nice big project that gets taken care of a little earlier than, sooner, and it makes the budget a little better down the road. Do I have that right?
Yes. So if you look at the, we provided copies from the budget book, program strategies for wastewater utility system. If you look at page 161, there's a couple different categories of expenditure. About 5 lines down from the top on that page, 161, there's engineering costs that are listed there, which total about $265,000. Secondary clarifiers recoat and secondary clarifiers recoat for construction engineering. Those are about $265,000 of engineering costs. And you go further down on the page in projects, towards just past the middle section of that project listing, there's secondary clarifiers recoat and secondary clarifier number 4 installation. There's various costs there that reflect from 2022 to 2023 all the way out to 2029 to 2030. Those costs total $1,936,000 and $1,140,000. Those are all the kind of costs that we would be able to accelerate into a more immediate project within the next year's time to 2 years' time for completion purposes. And that totals about $3,300,000 with the engineering included. The construction is just over $3 million, but the engineering adds another $265,000. So that's where we're talking about the $3.3 million expense that could be accelerated into the next couple of years' time period. And we can realize the benefit more immediately, including the residential billing customers. So,
which we may need,
right, with
the growth that's going on.
Correct, and we are going to need it sooner rather than later, to some extent, because of what's happening with this new development. So,
so I like the idea. I had the benefit of getting a little preview of some of this when I was in your office last week, and you were talking about it. And I know you've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's the best way to use this, and I feel like you've arrived at this is where you've arrived at. This is the best place that we could apply this money. And it sounded like you had something that was kind of second place.
Yeah,
I already forgot what it was. You said it today here.
Yeah, the cost recovery is something we could do, but that would just basically allow us in the future to do this kind of project anyway.
Village stuff, yeah.
Right.
And that's, like I said, it's it's fungible. We're doing it now. It's going to feel good down the road. Or, but this might be a need, and who knows, it might be a bigger need than we even realize. So.
Yeah, my predisposition on these things is to not just have a one-time benefit, and I think by doing this investment in the infrastructure in the wastewater treatment plant, I think we're going to turn it into a longer-term benefit that will continue to bring benefit to us in the future. These new developments, the billing relief that could be made possible for existing customers, it's just something that kind of makes it a gift that keeps on giving, type of thing is the way that I'm predisposed to use this kind of funding.
We'll have something to show for it for years
Right.
to come, like infrastructure should be.
Right.
Yeah, I'm good.
Thank you.
I see. Marilyn, do we have an answer for Tom? Or?
I was listening in my office, so I'm assuming it was the CDBG sort of organization.
So any of those institutions or organizations that come looking or competing with, in a number of communities for those funds, if anything fits any of the ARPA regulations for it, could we take at least a little bit of a small amount, one that impacts our community directly, and look into that? That's all.
I mean, that could be something considered. We'd have to check first to see if that is indeed an eligible expense as basically a pass-through grant program. You would have to do it in a fair manner. I don't believe you could just pick and choose what organizations you would want. You would have to roll out some sort of a grant-type program to let applicants come in and apply for those funds and kind of set up a program in order to do that. Because we're under the stipulations of federal funding,
right.
So you have to run it through a whole process. So it's definitely a good question that we can ask to see if that's a possibility. and then determine what steps we would have to take to do that if we would wish to move forward with something like that.
I agree, if we can do something now to reduce water and sewer rates for the community at large, that's also a great thing. Like you said, it's a gift that keeps on giving, so
Right.
I'm in support of it as well. But
Yeah, and I will mention, I had a lengthy phone conversation with Plant Moran, with one of their other representatives that we deal with, and they are seeing that a lot of their clients are choosing a large-scale project, typically it is water, wastewater, to have a whole benefit to the community, to hopefully reduce some rate structure in the future and expand the system that is an expense that you're going to have to do eventually anyway. So we had that discussion that they're seeing a lot of communities are choosing to do it that way.
The administrative burden is so much less as well, right? Because you have to keep track of that project internally already. Now it's just a matter of submitting those expenses, and it fits the project listing already. So I think it just has the appeal of being very low administrative burden as well. So some of these other ones do not fit that.
Councilmember Berman?
I guess my only question was for Tim. Is this going to, when I took the tour of the plant, is it going to fill in that fourth spot? Is that what you're talking about we're going to be doing? Where there's the 3 spots now where the water agitates or whatnot?
Yes.
Wrong term, sure.
Yes.
So that fourth spot is what we're talking about.
Correct.
What this money is going to be going to.
Yes.
And then, is it going to eliminate the need for that second filtration system we have in the tent, or is that already done?
That is complete.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, thank you. But I agree that this is a good use of those funds. So.
Councilmember Grenla Fox?
I agree with the recommendation to use the funds for the water and sewer CIP. It sounds like it's good for the city, it's good for the residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. Looking through a few of these things, I understand the water and sewer. There's a lot of ifs that go into it, like tenant-based ifs, that if we have a lower use, then we're gonna have an even higher capacity system than we need, and we're already under capacity. So I understand wanting to do projects like that to maybe help out, but we don't know it will help out. Otherwise, from that, we have a 10-year capital plan. I don't know that we can get into, again, subsidizing costs, and that's why we're having to increase costs and build back up our funds now for water and wastewater. Is in the past, the city had subsidized costs and keep up with the increases it should have. This is once in a lifetime funding, and my thoughts when I saw this were that we should use it for community benefit as a whole, but something that we couldn't do otherwise. I mean, keeping up with our water and wastewater treatment plants, we're doing that. We've been funding for that. We brought up phosphorus. That's been talked about for 2 years now. I think I started asking about it, and then we got fined for it. When is that going to go down? Because I was told I know it was at an in-person meeting. I'm not sure if it was since we restarted or before COVID, since that whole year has basically gone away. Do you know, we were waiting on something to be replaced for that to go down, and then maybe it didn't happen?
There are a number of things that are under construction right now, and one of them is the oxidation ditches that are there will be. We're in the middle of constructing aeration for those, and next summer they should be completed, and we're expecting that should lower our phosphorus. Also, they're putting in a new polymer system right now with what we have, and that should also help. What this added capacity is simply it's primarily a volume issue that we want to make sure that we have enough capacity in our volume at the treatment plant to go through, and the secondary clarifiers is one of the bottlenecks that we're working on next. So with the industrial impacts and additional residential use that we're seeing, and also the potential in other developments, we feel that this is, we expect it within the next couple of years to see those flows increase.
And phosphorus will be back under the limits next summer?
We're hoping, we're planning, I should say, that the phosphorus should be under wraps by the end of next summer. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that info. But just going through this list, and obviously one of the first ones is replacing lost revenue through the public sector. Do we know, setting aside the funny accounting of being able to claim $500,000 that we're not taking, what did we lose during COVID in terms of building permits and rentals at our different facilities? Do we have any idea?
I'd have to look at those figures for an overall, by item. With the other reimbursements we received back through the other CARES Act funding, we're in a really good position at year end. We received over $700,000 in other funding and reimbursements for public safety payroll cost, for COVID expenditures that we had, hazard pay, a few other things. So our fund balance is very favorable at year end. So aside from, really our biggest loss was rentals, which I would venture to say was probably about $40,000 to $50,000. Maybe some Parks and Rec activities of, a fairly low number, maybe $20,000, $25,000. Building permit revenue was still quite good because we had the Ford property development coming in, which was a high dollar permit. So really the city fared quite well through the past year. Other than, those few key items that we couldn't perform because of COVID. Tax revenues came in as normal. There was no loss in tax revenue, or I guess a higher rate of delinquencies did not occur like we thought. State revenue sharing came in very close to what we, better than we budgeted, because it came in better than anticipated from what the state had told us. So actually our year went fairly well with all things considered.
I guess you brought up state shared revenue and that didn't even come to mind. So they're just picking, the federal government picks a date in the past, basically, that this can apply up to or from until now?
Correct, yeah. So it's your point of comparison is that period in the past, and then it compares it to the current experience, and then it excludes things like CARES Act reimbursement. So I mean, that $700,000 doesn't even get held against us. So we get to not only count millage changes because of debt payoff, because of a discretionary decision to collect less, we get to count those things as revenue loss, and then on the revenue side we're comparing it to, we get to exclude things that we did actually receive, like CARES funding, from the calculation. So it's very favorable to having a larger number than you would expect for revenue loss.
So it sounds like, setting aside state shared revenue, we're probably under 100,000 lost then, primarily in rentals and Parks and Rec.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and state shared revenue came in better than expected.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there were some expenses, related to PPE and things like that, but nothing that amounts to much. I think your 100,000 figure is probably plenty generous.
Yeah, and a lot of the COVID expenses were reimbursed through the state.
Through CARES anyway, but you don't get to count that, or you don't have to count that.
Right.
So that was just something that jumped out at me, especially since we've been kind of spending down the budget stabilization fund, is if we can somehow contribute back to that through some mechanism, such as replacing a little bit of the lost revenue. One of the other things that came to mind is under addressing education disparities. And I was wondering if anyone had spoken with the library yet to see if they could use any of the funding to improve any of their equipment or selection, collection, anything like that. That was something that came to mind. I understand the desire to use it for water and wastewater, that's already built into our budget. This is like windfall money, and I'd like to see it used primarily to do something we couldn't do otherwise. Thank you.
If I can address that a little bit more directly, not the library aspect of what you're saying about being able to address other things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So that capital improvement plan that we have is going to receive relief if we choose to use this ARPA funding for that purpose, and we'll have that funding available for other capital projects that maybe there would be other things that we could look at. We could look at additional road projects. The limitations wouldn't be there from there because it would be just freeing up those dollars that we otherwise would have spent by using this ARPA funding. So I think we'll have a lot of different options in front of us for additional capital projects. Could be roads, could be something that we would not normally be able to do because of the limitations that we have, but this would free up those dollars and allow us to do some new things.
Are those not dedicated I thought they were dedicated capital plans. They aren't a part of our own like general fund, general operating 10-year capital, though all of that is paid strictly out of the water and wastewater revenue. It's not like we could, if we're not going to spend the money on, or if we spend this 1 point whatever million on that, then we can take some of the water wastewater funds out to use for roads. That's not my understanding.
Caught me.
Okay. Thank you.
I was hoping that'd be the case, but you're right. I had forgotten about that aspect of it because that is through the rate structures and things of that nature. So that would just translate to the relief for the residents. So.
Assistant City Manager Benson.
I just had one other comment. You were talking about capacity and being under capacity. I just wanted to clarify a little bit. To say we're under capacity really only means we're under the maximum capacity that we can possibly do. Yep. One of the things, some of the businesses we've talked to about locating in there are incredibly high users, higher than maybe the average industrial user, but when we've taken into account the flows that they would need both in and out, that's actually part of how this conversation came together, is to say, within the next 2, 3, 4 years, we could potentially have a problem in that sense if we had enough big users. So it's not that there's a significant amount of capacity left. What Ford left us when they left was a lot. And we've had a fair amount of development that's taken it off in chunks. So I wanted to clarify that part, that there's not a lot of room left in that sense.
I guess what we have there now, because Ford was not a light user, I would guess. So we have the underground infrastructure over there. It's just like when somebody wants to build a house, they need to pay a tap fee and make their improvements. Why would we be making the improvements for industrial users instead of them paying for their own stuff?
They do. They pay in the form of tap fees and these other kind of large one-time revenues. Some of these are hundreds of thousands of dollars that end up going to the capital budget and come out in that way. And I think that's probably part of why these particular projects may have been pushed out as far as they were, is to give us the lead time to collect sewer tap fees to get to those numbers at a comfortable level, right? In this scenario, we would be able to throw more money at it more quickly and get ahead of it, as opposed to sort of waiting longer, if that makes sense.
How underpowered, I guess I'll say, for lack of a better term, is the infrastructure that's there now that was supplying a whole car plant compared to what we need?
It's not the underground it's not the actual pipes. That's not the concern. It's our ability to take large amounts of water through those, and then they bottleneck through the clarifiers and through our actual treatment processes. That's where the capacity increase would happen, is through these additional investments. So we'd be able to move more water through it, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm just like, the plant hasn't shrunk since Ford left, though, right?
No, but we've added other users in the meanwhile as well that have eaten up the capacity that had been there for the Ford plant.
Yeah,
so.
From Milford Township, I guess, right?
Other industrial users, anybody we've added to in the business side of things, the various developments that we've accomplished over the years, and there's been a lot of them because the city is getting more built up than it had been previously. So there's been capacity that's been eaten up through those other developments that has been eaten into what Ford had in the past. And now, when we start adding additional new big ticket users, if you will, large capacity users, that's where we're going to start running up against capacity problems.
So your question about Ford Motor was designed or could contribute up to 1.2 million gallons a day. And our design capacity for the wastewater treatment plant was 2.89. And at the time that Ford left, they were running about 750,000 gallons a day. And when they shut off that pipe, our flows went down to about 1.5 million gallons, between 1.5 and 1.75 million gallons. We're up around 2.2 right now, which means we have just under 600,000 gallons a day that is capacity on a daily average. And with the industries that have come to pass in the last 10 years, we're seeing that we will go well over that 3 million gallons a day within the next 3 years.
So it sounds like we're over, or we've surpassed the Ford capacity. They're 750,000.
We have.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, on the wastewater treatment plant and different expenditures that we've got forecast needs into the future, what's the rough dollar amount figure? Is 12 million?
It is roughly 12 million overall.
10 to 12 million
Yes.
over the next period of years that we're going to need to make additional investments, right?
Right.
To the extent that we don't have to make these investments, or those, like that investment that I mentioned in year 2029, 2030, if we've already funded that because of this ARPA funding, we'll have funding available at that time to make an additional improvement at the plant that potentially could be there.
Inflation.
Depending on what we do meanwhile in terms of adjusting rates.
Correct.
Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when we started this conversation, Councilmember Smiley, I thought, had really summarized it nicely. We can just put the money in the wastewater treatment plant, and then we can use that money for something else. But then we heard later that's not really what we can do. So I'm not really sure whether I'm supporting this or not. What are the next steps? Are we just talking about it tonight? Are we is somebody sending us a $1.4 million check tomorrow? We have to decide what to do with it, or
both?
What? Both.
So we don't know when they're going to send us the check.
Voting on anything tonight, or?
Yeah, we're not looking for. I'm not looking for a vote. I'm just looking for some consensus as whether you're interested in that approach or not. Is all I'm looking for. To pursue the.
It sounds like we're getting the money regardless of whether we figure it out tonight or not, right?
Right. Correct. We don't know when. And Marilyn can correct me if I'm wrong. We still have no idea when.
No.
This has been going on for I don't know how long, and the date has changed I don't know how many times, and we still don't have the funding. But the funding is at the state.
It is.
Yeah, so the state has our money, so to speak. It's just a matter of how we're going to distribute it to the municipalities and when. So it's a question of when, not if, is the story that we have in front of us right now. So what we're looking for is when we get this money, what can we use it for? And the thing that I mentioned, potential action, would be incurring expenses for design, engineering, and things of that nature. We're not going to incur hundreds of thousands of dollars expense right out of the gate. It's just going to be getting started on the project, doing design, engineering, and those kind of things would be what the first step would be if we do get consensus to move forward with the infrastructure on the wastewater plant.
For a capacity increase.
Correct.
That we may or may not need in the future, isn't in our 10-year capital plan.
Well, I would say it's inevitable that we're going to need it, it's just a matter of when.
But not yet.
Correct.
So I'm just trying to figure out what happens next. We get the money and then we have to tell them how we used it?
Yeah, as we use it, we'll report it. Correct, yeah, so timing, do you want to talk about timing?
I believe we have a couple years technically to utilize the funds, and we have to do quarterly reports to the state and federal government of what we're utilizing the funds for, and then ultimately a final report of what we did with it, and then we'll be audited with a single audit that the auditors will look at all of the expenditures that relate to the grant or the funds that we receive. And it is, I mean, as far as we know, we will receive the money this fiscal year. We'll receive it in 2 separate payments. We'll receive the first half here hopefully quite shortly, and then the second half at the beginning of the calendar year. So that's what they're telling us so far.
So if a check shows up in the, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm exceeding my time maybe. If a check just shows up in the mail tomorrow, what happens to it? We put it in the bank, right?
Yes.
And then we don't write any checks against that check until city council approves it.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And that's when we bring these individual recommendations to use it, whether it be water, wastewater infrastructure or something else. That's when you would have individual requests in council. So I'm just trying to warn you ahead of time that that's what we're thinking we want to do, and want to see if you're on the same page or a similar page or a totally different page. That's what we're looking to talk about, I guess.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to go back to that, the money's fungible, and what Councilman Gotchel brought in, so that was a great point. That's what I was trying to understand, and the money's not quite as broad. Not the 1.4 million that we're going to get. It's not, and if we apply it to this wastewater treatment capital investment item, it's not quite as broadly going to be fungible throughout the rest of our budget. Really, it kind of stays within the wastewater, area, for our residents. So it will relieve the cost of things there down the road immediately, depending on how it's just used, dispersed. It still saves us some expense that's coming. It's just that I don't know. It couldn't get. I don't know. It might not affect the. Well, we might not be able to directly, or something we'll have to work on. Because I like the mentioning of putting something back into budget stabilization. That's like they're kind of like two separate. It's too separate to really be that clean and easy. Yes, no, maybe.
Well, one of the potential options, and Marilyn, you might be able to speak to this too, is if the desire of council was to have some sort of mix, right? Let's say it was $1 million for wastewater. You like that idea, and then however much we could claim in
Loss.
Yeah, the loss, and that could then turn into general fund money, which could go into the budget stabilization. So that's in theory a way to do it too.
Okay.
That's an alternative too.
But just for brevity, that's the part we'll work on later. Right now, get the money, and we can talk about more fine tuning what it goes towards.
Well,
So we have talked about, we've taken from budget stabilization for a while. We've been talking about trying to give a little bit back to it, and this might be an opportunity for that. Maybe. We'll talk about it later.
Between the general fund balance and the budget stabilization fund, we might have spent into it, but it's still, it also goes up as our operations come in favorable, which has happened for the last couple of years. So the amount of reduction to that is probably overstated. We're in a very healthy position on both general fund balance as well as budget stabilization.
Yeah, that percentage it was really good, now it's only good.
It used to be really, really, really good. Now it's
Really,
maybe only
really
two
good.
really's.
Yeah,
It's very solid, let's put it that way. So.
That's a discussion for another day, so I'll leave it.
And that is another option, as Drew was mentioning, if you do the revenue recovery, that does allow for more broader use of the funding. So that's another approach we can take. It's just a question of, we do need to make these investments in the wastewater treatment plant in our capacity issues that we're going to be experiencing. And initially, we were thinking it was going to be multiple years down the road. If we utilize it in this fashion, it'll be done within the next 2 years time period. So
Seems nice and clean.
indeed.
There.
And that's what Marilyn mentioned in terms of other communities coming up with the project costs as being a nice, clean way to handle it. Revenue loss is clean as well, and some communities might be in a position where they need that, and we could make that decision as well, and that's something for you to think about. So,
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what we were talking about before with UFS, maybe for Councilman Sharp as well, that if by the use of these funds for the infrastructure investments could reduce those projected rate increases that UFS puts in front of us at the budget session, then I'm very strongly in favor of it because it benefits, the majority of Wickham citizens. So that'd be a great study to see that if we do this now with the 1.4 million, boom, 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 these go down by 10%, 20%, whatever it is, right, over the course of the next 5 years. I think that'd be a valuable exercise, and that would at least be something tangible for us to look at.
So we could take some guidance away here. Again, we didn't need to make a decision today. It's just whether you're tentatively interested in those. I would say those couple of uses. We could basically be looking at the wastewater treatment plant infrastructure improvements. We could be looking at revenue loss, a combination of both. We could be looking at potentially some of those NGO partnerships that we discussed and could take a look at. If those are in the suite of a couple of 3 different things that you'd be interested in us looking at, we can take a look at it and proceed from there. And then when we make the decision, we can talk to UFS and try to find out what kind of impact we can have there, and we can provide more information there. If you want to call the discussion good at this point, if there's other thoughts, that's fine as well. But are those 3 categories something that kind of meets the general consensus?
Yeah, I think you've got your...
Trying to put it together?
Yeah, I think you got your, you've got the direction from us, and you know which way to go. And
as Councilmember Sharp mentioned, we're not making funding decisions.
Yeah, this is just a discussion tonight.
And thank you, Councilmember Resnick, or Deputy Mayor Resnick, for clarifying. You're right. If rate structure is a tangible benefit of the 1.4 million, I think we could get our arms around data a little better than just talking right here. So that's good.
I think that's the whole purpose of this too, is to get us that, and Steve will get us the data.
Yeah, this isn't the time of year we normally engage with UFS on this, so I don't want to, engage with them and talk about something that doesn't come to fruition. I wanted to see if there was some support for it. So it sounds like there is. We can talk to them and see what kind of impact they think that might make, and we can get back to you with more detail.
Anybody else?
Thanks.
All right, very good. New business number 6 is a recommendation to request to convene in a closed session of the City Council in accordance with the Open Meeting Act for the purpose of discussing real property and a periodic personal evaluation of city clerk and city manager pursuant to and authorized by MCL 15.268D and MCL 15268A respectively. All right, before we go into roll call on this, just in lieu of transparency, due to the expected length of the closed session, when we come back, we will not be doing live stream. The live stream will cancel after when we adjourn to go into closed session. So roll call, please.
Councilmember Behrman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchel?
Yes.
Councilmember Grunland Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp?
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley?
Yes.
Mayor Beagle?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Yes?
7 yes.
Very good. And we'll move on to the second call to the public. The rules are the same as the first time we had to call to the public, which will be the public shall address the council during call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence, again after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reasoning for addressing the council. And all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do I have anybody for the second call to the public? All right. Seeing none, I'll close that. Move on to city manager comments.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, city manager update. We wanted to make sure we mentioned we had a influenza shot clinic on Tuesday, September 13th. They were offered to all city employees as well as Wixom senior citizens. We had about 20 flu shots administered. We thank Walgreens of Novi for volunteering to be on site to administer the shots, and Anna Kulis Rosenthal for organizing the event as part of her other duties as assigned these days, so we appreciate that. We wanted to congratulate Jody Bannerman in the fire department, who recently completed all probationary requirements and received his fire department badge. He's been promoted to the rank of firefighter 2 EMT. So congratulations to Jody Bannerman on that. The last thing is our work anniversaries. We've got 7 employees who are celebrating years of service with the city in the month of October, ranging from 2 years out to 24 years with Craig Sherbarth in the police department. So congratulations and thank you to all the employees for their years of service in the city of Wixom. And beyond that, the other thing that I was going to make mention of is something that we're going to try to do in reaction to something that Deputy Mayor Resnick had mentioned at a prior council meeting about contextual currency on updates related to the website. If you look at the dates to remember, we're looking at those highlighted areas as being ones that we're going to be targeting for current updates on what we refer to as the hero panel. Is that what we call it? So that's the MO that we're going to try to follow in the future. So when you see these upcoming events in bold, you should be seeing stuff on the website that highlights those and brings those to greater attention. So that's our MO plan.
Thanks. And just a quick update, we're going to try to get a little celebration for Jody here next week to pin his badge, and we're going to be bringing back the cake. But can we figure out how many times during COVID we lost the cake opportunities and claim that as a loss? And
It's incalculable, Larry.
all right, Councilmember Berman.
No comments this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Gaccio.
Thank you. Since we had 2 items from the Trailway today, one thing that came to mind is with all the future maintenance, and granted, hopefully that's well off in the future, is that all going to be handled by the Trailway Council, or will we be responsible for what's within city limits?
That's the second one.
Okay.
We'll be responsible for maintenance of.
When are we going to start putting that into the capital plan, do you expect?
We'd have to look at the projected life and things of that nature. It's probably well beyond 10 years, so it'd be a while, but we can start to get that into the capital plan.
Okay.
Yep.
That was the big question that came to mind, is just so we're not caught off guard. So we have to put like 10 years out, put like a sticky note somewhere on somebody's calendar that might still be around, and that way they know, hey, start saving.
That envelope joke, so many envelopes. You have to leave that in the envelope, right? So.
But aside from that, I think it's before our next council meeting is kind of like the fall day of fun that I always look forward to, having the fire station open house on the October 9th from 10 to 2, and then Fall Fest and Panther Hunt from 5 to 8. It's always a nice day to get out and see residents and whatnot. I hope I can help with the Panther Hunt. I'll be taking an exam that day, so we'll see how long that goes. Thank you.
And if I may, I want to add to something that Councilmember Gonchal just said, is isn't that bad news kind of thing. Monster Mash? Are we not?
We're not doing it.
Yeah,
because
correct.
it's an
That's
inside
listed.
activity.
It's listed on the dates to remember. That's going to be a casualty of the COVID-19 ongoing situation. There's enough concerns in the community. People are wondering if they want to send their kids into a large number of people in a tight area. So we're going to be canceling that event, unfortunately. So that's happening in a variety of communities across the area. There's very few that are doing those kind of events, and the one that I know of that Deanna shared with me is very limited, up to like the 30 kids, which I think you're going to make more people unhappy doing that than you are just canceling the event. So that's what we've chosen to do there, just as a bit of bad news.
All right, Councilmember Garland Fox.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate Jody Vanderman for passing all of his probationary requirements for a firefighter. I'd also like to congratulate and thank all of those celebrating work anniversaries. And then I'd like to make a request from my fellow council members as well as administration. When we're making the calendar for next year for the council dates, can we skip that Tuesday before Thanksgiving, possibly? I know a lot of people go out of town. I do.
We can certainly look at that.
I know we do that at Christmas time.
Right.
Over the holidays, we kind of move around. Just a request.
Yeah, we could shift it to a different date or skip it altogether. We can take a look at that, I suppose. Clerk can take a look.
Thank you.
Interesting idea.
Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Laura Cloutier and the DDA for a fine block party, and City Manager Brown for volunteering his time to serve in the tent, and whoever other volunteers were there that I didn't see. I probably have forgotten a lot, but thank you very much. It was a good event. And
Russ Meredith, who you heard from earlier, was there the entire day, so he's a guy you should really say thank you to. So.
15 hours.
Yeah. He and Drew Benson had something going on because Drew won the raffle. I don't know. But Moxie Blitz, that band, we got to think about them for next summer's. They were really good.
I've already talked to Jack.
Yeah, all right. That's it. I've said enough tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I have nothing to add.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mayor. Also wanted to congratulate the DDA and all the volunteers for the block party. It was a great weather. Thank you for bringing that good weather, DDA. And the bands were fantastic. I went and canvassed a lot of the tents late in the day, and they all seemed to be very pleased with the outcome, so that was good. Drosha Farms, the syrup guy, a couple of the craft people, and the guy that sold the birchwood stuff, they all said they did good. So also the Barking in the Park the following day was great. Our City Beagle didn't win any awards or prizes, but yeah, it was well attended and great weather for that as well. So some nice outdoor events that were held. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep, and I want to congratulate Jody Bannerman on completing his probationary requirements and receiving his fire department badge, and I'd like to thank these 7 employees with their work anniversaries. Thank you for your all you do for the city. And yeah, Bark in the Park was a great event, well attended, great day, and the block party was a great event. And with that, we will move into closed session. Thank you.